Welcome to Ticker Talk. Today's guest, Brad Joffe. Great story. Another one who's been through the law.
And so all of a sudden I was doing things that, my peers wouldn't dream of doing.
Working on an amazing startup called Apartheid with a few stops via Israel and Greensill Bank.
I want to be in something exciting and new, and pioneer Israeli tech was definitely that.
I'm very interested in hearing about the impetus for his current business. It seems to be one of those AI-driven businesses for good.
We engage with these scammers. We extract all of this critical intelligence from them.
Looking forward to Brad's story. Brad Joffe, co-founder and chief commercial officer of Apartheid.ai. Welcome to Ticker Talk.
Thank you very much for having me, Max.
Great to have you here, and I'm wearing a little cap today from Jerusalem, a city that's important to both of us. But I think we first met at a Shabbat dinner in Tel Aviv that John Medvedev hosted. Do you remember that in 2017, 2018?
I remember it very well, actually.
Yeah.
What did Max do?
I don't know. Max was obviously he was very well behaved, as he always is.
Okay.
But yeah, we used to spend a lot of time in Israel together. I think we were there a couple of times together, actually.
We did.
Yeah.
We did.
But that particular Shabbat dinner, we used to go there quite a lot to that. It was at the house.
Yes. Yeah. Beautiful little, in the old village of, in Jaffa, I think it was.
Exactly.
In the old city, yeah.
Yeah, in Jaffa. So, we used to travel to Israel a lot as part of one of my last roles with Our Crowd. So you mentioned John Medved. He's, a seminal figure in Israel, in the Israeli VC ecosystem. Built a business called Our Crowd, which essentially is looking to democratize VC investing.
Yes.
And what I mean by that is that, VCs traditionally have been pretty hard to access for everyday investors, regardless of sophisticated investor tests and all the rest of it. It's really been kind of this boys' club where it's a who's who. You got the right contacts, you can get into the, latest and greatest companies. And it was very, very hard for people to really access that. So John built this platform where they would go and they would source these amazing deals. It was very well known in the Israeli ecosystem. They would invest some money into those deals and then they would open it up to the crowd or Our Crowd of investors who could invest alongside them.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good. Before we get to Our Crowd, though, and the various times you were with Max in Jerusalem, you're a Sydney boy?
I'm a Sydney boy.
Studied law initially?
I studied law. I was born in South Africa.
Yes.
Like a lot of Sydney boys. And I moved here when I was 5 years old. I think like a lot of South Africans.
On your own, or with family members?
Oh, on my own, yeah. No,
You've always been very responsible.
South Africa wasn't the place for me. I think like a lot of families in that day and age, there was a big wave of immigration around that time. So I came in 94. Mm-hmm. And my dad, like a lot of other people, really feared that there might be a civil war in South Africa. And we had some family over here. So we decided to come over to Sydney. I grew up in Sydney. I think coming to Sydney was the best thing that ever happened to me, to be honest.
Why? What?
I just don't think there's a better place to really grow up. I really don't. And
I disagree.
And I don't think there's a better place now. I mean, I've just had a little boy. He's 11 months old. And I don't think there's a better place to raise a family than Sydney. It's amazing. It's far away from everything else, but other than that, it's unbelievable.
And
so tell us about those early growing up, education, first job.
Growing up, education, first job.
In that order.
Okay, yes, of course. Growing up. So we moved over here. My dad had a sister here. So when we moved over, we came and we stayed with her. None of us really knew where we were going, what the suburbs were, what the geography of Sydney was like. But we ended up right around the corner from Vaucluse Primary School with my auntie. Mm-hmm. And then we found a house in Woollahra and we went and we lived there in a little terrace over there. But because we initially set foot in Vaucluse, for some reason I was registered there. So I ended up going to Vaucluse Primary School, which was great. Mm-hmm. And then I was the first cohort to go through Redham House. Redham House had just opened when I was transitioning into year 7, and went into Redham House and spent my whole high school there. It was a great experience. Pretty average, normal kid, like nothing really out of the ordinary. Loved music. Mm-hmm. I thought I was going to one day perhaps be a rock star, but I went the complete opposite way and ended up, studying law and being a lawyer. So went through that. And then when I finished school, I think a lot of people in Australia particularly kind of get caught in this trap because you're forced to try and decide what you want to do when you're 16 or 17 years old. You know, it's the year before you finish HSC. And I pretty much just put my preferences as like, what's the highest mark? What's the best course to get into? And law was one of those preferences. And I ended up getting into a Bachelor of Law and International Studies at UTS. And I studied that. And as part of the International Studies degree, I learned a bit of Spanish and went over to San Diego for a year and lived there and studied there.
San Diego, Spain.
San Diego, yeah, exactly. So they offered a Latino USA track for this international studies.
Yes.
And I don't think I spoke a word of Spanish when the whole point is you're supposed to go to a country, immerse yourself, speak the language. And I don't think I spoke a word of Spanish when I was in San Diego, except maybe ordering some tacos or ordering some beers. And then I got back and pretty much started my career in the law. Had a grad role at a firm here called Arnold Bloch Leibler. And yeah, it was really good. You ask about first job because it's quite interesting. I mean, that wasn't my first job, actually. My first job was actually a pizza delivery boy as soon as I got my license, like a lot of other people. And then I was always tinkering and kind of trying to come up with business ideas when I was a little bit younger. Ended up going into the law, and that was great. That was a really good career, but a bit of a jarring one for me because 4 months into my grad role, my partner that I was not my partner, the partner that was managing me, walks into the office, knocks on the door, and he says, "All right, Brad, I got some news. I'm leaving the firm. Do you want to come with me or do you want to stay here?" And so I had to kind of make that decision pretty early on in my career. But yeah, that's...
And where'd you go?
Yes.
What did I do? Yeah, the cliffhanger. I ended up going with him.
Yes.
And my rationale was that it doesn't really matter what color the walls are or what the sign is on the front of the building. We were moving to a mid-tier firm. It was still a great firm. And my rationale was if I enjoy working with him and I can learn from him, then why not just go with him?
Well, it's always about the people, isn't it? The people you work with and for and around.
Definitely, 100%.
We have had a lot of people sitting in your seat who have started as lawyers, but none of them we've interviewed as lawyers. So what was the thing that prompted you out of the law? Yeah,
and I think the legal degree these day and age, I was reading something a few years back where it was saying, you know, the law degree is the new arts degree.
Yeah.
And again, I think it comes back to the fact that you're 16 or 17, you choose what you want to do. And so a lot of people think, all right, whatever is the best marks, I want to do that, so I'll go into the law.
Yeah, those with a science bent did medicine. Those with a social humanist bent did the law.
Exactly.
I know.
Yeah,
yes.
Exactly. And so I got in there. When we left the firm, it was actually really interesting. There were at ABL, there were 4 people on my team. There was my managing partner, another lawyer, a senior associate, and myself, the grad. We moved across. The lawyer stayed at ABL. And so it was my managing partner, a senior associate, and me, the grad. The senior associate went on maternity leave. So it was my managing partner and me, the grad.
Yeah.
And we had all of this work coming in. And so all of a sudden I was doing things that, you know, my peers wouldn't dream of doing. They were stuck in rooms doing discovery, which, by the way, I don't think it actually exists anymore, and we'll get to that. But
it's been undiscovered. Yes.
Exactly, yeah. Well, now we've got machines doing discovery. But yeah, so I all of a sudden was thrown in the deep end, and I was drafting documents and I was meeting with clients, and sometimes it backfired and blew up in my face because the clients would call me and say, "What the hell is this?" I'm like, it's my first day. I don't know. But I think at the end of the day, what made me leave the law was I could distinctly remember this feeling of people are giving me the instructions, and that's fine. And the law taught me to think in a certain way, and it gave me a really good grounding. But I always remember thinking, I want to be the one giving the instructions. I don't want to be the one taking the instructions, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's that piece around agency that I felt was a little bit lacking in a law firm. It's very structured, it's very formal, but it's not a very entrepreneurial, exciting environment to be in.
The first occupant of that seat was Alex Vinegar, and
Right.
he gave the exact same story.
Yes,
so
yes.
hopefully you can channel some of that in your
Yeah.
future.
Have you always wanted to be a dictator? Is that-
Yeah, actually, I have.
Yeah.
That's always been a dream of mine, and hopefully, I'll get there one day.
So what was the opportunity after the law?
So we talked about Our Crowd.
Yeah.
One of my clients at the law firm was Our Crowd.
Okay.
So I worked quite a lot with the managing director at the time, Dan Bennett, who you
Yep.
know well.
Yes.
And every time that I got instructions from Our Crowd, I always prioritize it because I loved the work. It was really exciting, like it was new technology, it was venture investing. We did actually the first crowd-funded deal in Australia, which was a medical devices company that ended up creating some wearables for Parkinson's sufferers. So it would essentially help. One of the biggest problems with the disease is that it's very, very hard to know at certain times when patients might be suffering from bradykinesia, which is kind of the shaking and other things. And this wearable device actually helped with that. It seems, novel now, but it seems kind of commonplace now, but at the time was quite novel, and the analytics off the back of it were quite good. So we ended up doing that. I still have that little, what do they call them?
Tombstones?
Yeah, I don't know
Yes.
why they call them a tombstone. But anyway, I've still got that actually at home. And yeah, an opportunity presented itself to go and work with Dan. And at that time I was kind of having those thoughts. I'm like, I want to be the one giving the instructions, and I want to be in something exciting and new, and pioneer Israeli tech was, definitely that.
And Our Crowd was a small business in Australia, but it actually had a good ecosystem of partners too, didn't it?
Yeah. So there were 3 of us in Australia, so pretty small. We ended up working quite a lot with NAB. So we ended up getting a pretty good partnership with their private bank, and that was a good way for their private clients to get access to this asset class that they wouldn't otherwise have access to. But globally, Our Crowd was really a force. It's one of the most prolific investors, particularly in Israel. So a lot of VCs, it depends on which VCs, but a lot of the VCs, in Australia, they might be doing 10, 20 deals a year if they're very active. Our Crowd was doing 60, 70 deals a year, maybe even more at times. So they did about 170 deals. Some of them were out of Israel. A lot of them were out of the US, Europe, Australia, pretty much like a really global bent on what they were doing.
And I seem to recall Our Crowd saying that Australia was the 3rd biggest market for funding as well, which is extraordinary given the size of the country.
Yeah, definitely. And look, Dan did an amazing job here. There's definitely some execution in that. And I think the other thing, though, is I don't know. I think the VC ecosystem here has progressed a lot. But 10-ish years ago when Our Crowd launched, there were only a handful of funds in Australia. Again, it was very, very hard to get access to them. I think for Australians as well, at that time, it was hard to get access to overseas opportunities, even listed opportunities, right?
Yes.
And so I think Our Crowd came with this amazing proposition, which is now you can get access to the cutting edge tech in all these parts of the world. And if you look at even someone like Apple or Google or Amazon or Netflix at that time in 2016, around that time, even though they had amazing runs in the public markets, if you look at the value creation, like 90% of the value creation is in the private market.
Absolutely.
And so everyone really wanted to get a piece of that.
What do you think of private markets?
I think like these days, it's particularly in the States, obviously things have changed now. Companies are doing Series F and Series G fundraising. So they're staying private for a lot longer because I think there are these pools of capital now that exist that didn't necessarily exist a little while ago. I think the private markets, are good for the right profile of company. And I think you need to really be very thoughtful in the way that you raise capital, and then also thoughtful in the way that you think about listing on an exchange, because there are some huge benefits to listing on an exchange. But I think I understand why companies are trying to stay private for a little bit longer now. That's,
What about, alongside that, what about the impact on investors or on the ecosystem more broadly? It's one thing to assess whether it's good or bad for the company, but what about for the other participants in the market?
Yeah, and I think it is still hard, right? It's still hard to get access to those private market investments. There are platforms like Our Crowd, there are platforms like Angel Lists. I think like syndicates and other things are a lot more popular now than they may have been a little while ago. But yeah, I think it's hard. Like I think it's very hard for investors to get access to those private markets.
Well, that might be a good opportunity to break, and we'll go from Our Crowd to entrepreneurship after the break.
Sure.
Thanks, Brad.
Sounds good.
This episode of Ticker Talk is brought to you by the National Stock Exchange of Australia, the leading exchange for startups and scale-ups. Follow NSX on LinkedIn for market updates, news and events.
So, Brad, you were stepping us through Our Crowd, but what was the transition from Our Crowd, I guess, to your crowd? When did you, and why? Why did you move on from Our Crowd?
The king of puns here.
Clearly you were having a great time. What made you move that time somewhere else?
It was actually a similar situation to leaving the law. I think I got to a stage where we were meeting all these beautiful, exciting companies. We were trying to help them, whether that was through capital, whether it was through advice, whether it was through business development and opportunities. And again, I kind of looked at the founders on the other side of that, and I was like, I want to be one of those guys.
There's that dictator again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I looked at myself in the mirror. We were doing a lot of fundraising here in Australia, and that's all well and good. But at the end of the day, I really wanted to be an operator. Yeah. And I looked at myself in the mirror and I thought, here I am talking to all these young companies, trying to help them, trying to advise them, but I've never been sitting in their seat. So I really made the conscious effort to saying, I want to go and get my hands dirty and build something.
And I think you've said somewhere else that there were 3 startups.
Three since then, since leaving Our Crowd, there's been 3 startups I've been involved with. When I wish to get my hands dirty, I well and truly.
Do you have commitment issues or something?
Yeah,
I mean, 3 isn't one enough. I mean, I'm reminded of Oscar Wilde's comment about, look, to lose one parent might be regarded as unfortunate, but 3 startups, that's carelessness. But
exactly.
So Earned was one of them. But before we come to the current apartheid, but Earned was probably the highest profile of the 2 early ones. What was that business and what became of it?
Yeah. So left Our Crowd, part of the founding team at Earned. The proposition for Earned was giving people access to their earned money that they have earned from their employer, but not having to wait until the end of a lengthy pay cycle. So again, it was trying to, I suppose, in a similar vein to Our Crowd, democratize access to VC. It's more of a democratize access to the money that you've already earned. And this was a business that we really thought would be the next generation in consumer finance. And if you look at other parts of the world, I think that may still be true. And if you think about it, your employer is really, one of your biggest creditors. They're someone that is holding on to money that is really yours, right? Like you've worked a day to earn those funds, yet you have to wait 2 weeks or a month to be able to actually earn those funds. And we always used to talk about, going back thousands of years, there's no ways that you would ever leave the farm or wherever you were working on without getting a little kind of sack of gold. And so the concept was really trying to give people access to those funds. There's a huge amount of financial stress that exists here and in other parts of the world. And a lot of that is in the mismatch between actually income and expenses. And so what we did with Earned is we took a bit of a different approach. There are some companies out there that will scrape your bank statements and will lend you some money with a relatively high interest fee on that. With Earned, we thought that why don't we go to the source, which is the employer. We'd integrate with their payroll system. We'd integrate with their time and attendance system, so that if someone comes and they clock on their shift at 8 a.m. and they clock off at 6 p.m. and they're earning $27 an hour, we know exactly how much they've earned at the end of the day. And then we gave them the ability to access up to 50% of those earnings pretty much in real time as soon as they've finished their shift for a very, very small fee. And then we had a financing arm of the business as well, which would actually finance those transactions. So yeah, it was a great concept. We thought there were going to be CEOs lining up around the block because why wouldn't you,
There'd certainly be employees lining up around the block. So what happened? Why did it not take off, or did it in some way?
It did and it didn't. So we went through a wild ride with the Earned business. About a year into market, we were acquired by a business called Greensill Capital.
Oh, yes.
And
Heard of them.
Exactly.
Yes.
I'm sure some of the listeners would have heard of Greensill Capital as well. At the time, Greensill Capital...
So you were selling though. They only got it because you put it up for sale?
They kind of knocked on the door.
Okay.
Yeah. We actually saw that they'd acquired a very similar business to ours in the UK. And we ended up... Actually, Josh, one of the co-founders of the business, reached out to him cold on LinkedIn and said, hey, I see you've acquired this business. You know, is it worthwhile having a bit of a chat and trading notes? They ended up meeting, and pretty much in that first meeting, Lex decided that he was interested in the Earn business.
Yes.
So, we ended up selling the Earn business pretty early on in our journey. We ended up selling the week before COVID hit, and we were selling right to hospitality and retail and healthcare, a lot of the kind of frontline workforces that got impacted a lot by COVID. And at the time, Greensill was this $7 billion company. It was the jewel in the crown of SoftBank's portfolio. Masa thought that this was going to be the $100 billion company in the portfolio. We were all excited. We thought, this is it. We've made it.
Tell me you applied the earned theory, and as soon as you sold to Lex, you withdrew the money. Surely you didn't say, oh, no, you're down the track's fine, Lex, whenever you've got the funds.
Oh, gosh. So we did end up getting some money, but we also had quite a lot of options in Greensill Capital. And a year after the acquisition, it was 364 days, I'll still remember exactly, because there was a little bit of payment coming through at the 365-day mark, which was the year mark. But they announced that they were going into administration. And it was something...
Was that payment what tipped them over? You're responsible.
Because it really wasn't, in the scheme of things with the volume of payments that they were dealing with and the size of payments, I don't think that would have really made a difference to them. I think it was just unlucky timing.
How is Lex? I mean, the last time I saw him was the famous photo of him and Julie Bishop.
Yeah, at Davos. Yeah, in the snow.
In the snow, yes.
I haven't spoken to Lex in a long time.
Not returning your calls.
He's not returning my calls. Yeah, exactly. I think he's in Bundaberg in Queensland with the family on the family farm, doing his thing. He could also be in London. I'm not exactly sure.
Oh. But you bounced back from that.
We bounced back from that.
So describe the bounce, and where did you bounce to?
The bounce. Pretty much went into administration. The liquidators called us in for a meeting. They said, right, guys, you got 2 weeks. Otherwise, we're shutting the business down. And so we were scrambling. We thought, do we do a management buyout and just buy the company back? But by that time, we had 60 employees, and there was a lot of consideration about what we do with those people. And ended up actually, after a bit of a process, there were 14 interested parties, but we ended up selling to a business called WageStream at the time, which is actually our key competitor in the UK. And we always viewed them as kind of the faceless enemy. And then we hopped on the first call with the guys and we're just like,
you're
just like us. We're the exact same here. They ended up buying the business, pretty much said to us, you guys know Australia, you go and do what you need to do in Australia and we'll be here to support you. So it was actually fantastic and loved working with those guys. And then around the time that interest rates were moving from the zero interest rate policy and rising, the VC landscape shifted on a dime, really. The investors were saying to companies for so long, go out and spend money. Spend, get as many users as you can, spend. That's the name of the game. And I think the international story from a WageStream perspective was a great one. And, we obviously had gone up for sale and it was a good opportunity for them. But as soon as that started turning, the investors started saying, actually, guys, you really need to look to profitability here. Perhaps
reduce cash burn.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So pretty much made the decision that we would work with them to sell the Australian business, and ended up selling it for a third time within 4 years to a business called Human Force, which is an Australian-based business. And that was also a great time with the Human Force guys. But after 3 rebrands and 3 CRM migrations and all of that, pretty much all of
your
us
dictator
in the
traits
team.
You'd be getting itchy and shaky, wouldn't you?
Exactly.
You want to...
Yeah.
Give me something to control.
Yeah,
okay.
So we moved on.
So tell us about Apartheid. It sounds like something that's going to resonate with anyone that's ever had a phone call from a scammer.
Well, it sounds like a Greek goddess.
You've done
let's
your
have
homework.
the name. Let's explain the name first. And then I want to ask, why did you choose that? But anyway, go on.
Sure. So Aparte is the Greek goddess of deception. And it was actually my co-founder, Dali, who came up with the name. But I think it was a really good homage to what we're trying to do, which is essentially deceive the bad guys into thinking that they're actually speaking to a real human. So the whole concept of Aparte, I mentioned my co-founder, Dali, started about 5 years ago. He, like many of us, get really fed up with scam and spam calls. So one day in a park with his kids, he got a call from an unknown number. He thought, I'll give the kids a bit of a comedy show. Picked up the phone, spoke for 44 minutes to this scammer while the kids were laughing and rolling on the floor and being very entertained. And Dali was playing dumb and asking stupid questions and all the rest of it. And after he hung up that call, he thought, look, I actually just distracted that scammer for 44 minutes. It means that they weren't able to go and scam another victim. But at the same time, it was 44 minutes of my life that I can never get back. And Dali's a professor of cybersecurity at Macquarie University. And pretty much next day went into the office, got a postdoc, a couple of PhDs, and said, right, guys, we're going to build this solution where we're going to deploy these armies of realistic AI agents that sound exactly like you and me and your neighbor. And they come in thousands of different personas. They speak different languages. They have different accents. And we're
Do you do the Spanish ones?
Yeah, I do the Spanish ones. Yeah, exactly. And we're going to flood the market, essentially, work with telcos and try and actually divert all of these scammers and this scam traffic into these safe environments where they're actually speaking to agents. Because the thesis was if we can waste their time and resource at scale, we can really have a big impact on the scam economy. Because the scam economy at present, it's not just a lone person in a basement sending out those Nigerian prince emails with spelling mistakes. These are massive factories, cities, that are actually popping up in all different parts of the world, particularly in Myanmar and Southeast Asia. And they rely, like any other kind of sales and marketing operation, on people there on the phones, but instead of selling, they're really trying to scam people out of money. So if we can go and we can waste half of their day's worth of time, it means they're not able to earn half of their revenue. The business isn't able to earn half of the revenue. And we think we can actually do a really good job at, we call it flipping the script on the economics of fraud.
Well, yeah, and you've said, or it's on your website or something, that you beat them at their own game. You sort of out-scam them. I mean, because you're scamming them into thinking they're talking to a human that they're about to scam, but lo and behold, you're scamming them. There was another part of that foundation story that I loved. Who were the initial models? So you were doing the Spanish, yes.
Yeah.
But didn't one of the other founders use some family members?
Yeah, so there's 3 founders. There's myself, there's Dali, and there's Pete. And in the early days, we actually cloned a couple of voices, and Pete, would use his family members, his mum and dad. In the beginning, we had all these different names that we would give to the agents, and some of them were called Bob and Marianne or whatever it is, and everyone had their favorite one. And now we've got thousands, right? So it's very, very hard to choose the favorites. But yeah, it's been a
extra. Why doesn't everyone? I mean, because it works even at the individual level, as you say, let alone at the telco level, at the government level. Why isn't this in every household across the world?
Well, that's our mission, I suppose. So
I should be your marketing man.
I love it. Please, yeah.
What's the monetization point?
Yeah.
So who's your customer? We know who you're helping.
Yes.
All of us.
Yes.
But
Thank
you
for your
can't sell
service.
to us individually. So how are you?
Not at the moment.
Yeah.
So the best way to think about Aparte is this counterintelligence platform for scam and fraud. So when we go out and we waste these scammers' time and resource, that's all great. And it's a noble thing that we're doing by protecting everyday consumers. But the intelligence that we start to gather from each one of those interactions becomes very, very valuable to telcos, banks, government agencies, exchanges, whatever it might be, anyone who's the subject of scam and fraud. So from that first product where we would go out and deploy these voice agents, we've also now created text agents, we've created email agents, trying to really meet scammers where they are. And what we go out there and we do is we engage with these scammers, we extract all of this critical intelligence from them. So I'll give you one example. On one of our text bot deployments, for example, we might get one of our bots who has a profile picture and a name and a persona and all the rest of it. The scammers think that they're chatting to a real human, right? And after maybe 40 or 50 turns of conversation, talking about whatever investment opportunity that they might have and talking about the weather, one of our agents might say, all right, you know what? you've convinced me. My wife's going to kill me, but where do I send the money to? I'll start with $100. Where do I send the money to? And the scammer will release payment details to that particular agent, right? And we're able to get that. That's just one example. So it could be BSB and account numbers. It could be international bank accounts, crypto wallets, PayPal addresses.
Have you got something? You've got something to play for us, haven't you?
I do. Yeah. So I'll show you some of our.
Let's have it. Let's hear it.
I'll show you some of our voice agents.
MacBook Pro to be delivered to an address in San Diego, California, sir.
Be for real, mate. I'm in Sydney, not bloody California. I mean, no. I definitely didn't buy anything like that. Are you serious?
Okay, hang on a minute, mate. Like, are you saying I literally have to go buy some gift cards right now? That sounds kind of dodgy, you know? I didn't come down in the last shower.
Please listen to me. Sir, it's urgent security process to prevent fraud.
This still sounds dodgy, mate. I mean, are you asking me to go to the shops? Bloody hell. I need to be at work.
Wait, electronics and medicine? Are you sure you've got the right person? I don't normally buy things from overseas. I'm confused.
You are responsible for content, whether you order or not. If we don't resolve in the next 30 minutes, I must forward the case to police.
Hold on, 30 minutes? Why so quick? But I didn't even tell you my name.
What's your zip code so I can check what's available in your area?
My zip code? Oh, gosh. You're really putting me on the spot here. Let me think. I moved here a few years ago. It's 48322. That's still Michigan, right?
Perfect. Yep, that's West Bloomfield, right?
Wow, you know your stuff. You must have one of those fancy maps in front of you.
Let's get this clear that older lady, the younger woman, the chap saying mate, they're your bots.
They're our bots, exactly. So yeah, as I said, they're pretty much unrecognizable from you and me.
Yeah.
And that's the whole premise, right? Because every time a scammer comes through to someone, we need to be realistic and we need to be diverse as well. We can't just have one persona because the scammers will catch on pretty much straight away.
The old lady should say, look, just give me a minute while I go and get a pen.
Yeah.
And keep them waiting 7 minutes.
They do that.
7 hours.
It's here somewhere.
Yeah, they do that. And the bots get...
Oh, the pencil's broken.
And the bots get creative. So we pretty much employ reinforcement learning into our AI. So what that means is that each of the bots essentially are competing against each other to get the best outcome for the call. Okay. And so there's a kind of a carrot and stick approach in the way that we actually prompt and model these bots. And so some of them will get really creative and they'll say, oh, can you hang on a second? I just need to go make a cup of tea. And then for 3 minutes, there'll just be no talking. But my favorite, if people are happy to listen. Yeah. So we've got scammers. I think our record now is 82 minutes. So 82 minutes on the phone. You know, you can imagine.
Well, you've got to hand it to the scammer then. I mean, that's dedication to their job.
Yeah.
They deserve an employee of the week.
They do. They're very persistent.
Yes.
And look, our bots are pretty good because they always keep the scammer thinking that they're just on the cusp of getting what they want.
Yeah.
But after 80 minutes or 30 minutes or 50 minutes for some of these conversations, the scammers get pretty annoyed at the bots. Mm. So I think we're one of the only companies in the world that really celebrates when people swear when they're interacting with our product. And you might know this concept of NPS, Net Promoter Score.
Yes.
I think ours is NFS, which is Net Frustration Score, which is really, really a good indication of how our product's working. But I'll show you.
Scammers realise they will never win. Could you repeat that? Are you brigadier of the service filter? Are you the because you bloody oh dear, that sounds a bit intense. Are you kidding with me?
I see you're frustrated. We're talking about something else, help?
So the humans, the scammers who presume, well, not all of them by the sounds of things, but most of them might be humans.
Yeah.
They're the ones that are losing their cool, getting frustrated, swearing at your bots that are staying calm and not handing over their bank account details.
Exactly. They stay very calm. He says, oh, that sounds a bit intense.
Do you ever get a bot v bot battle?
We are seeing it a little bit more now. I think like being in this game and knowing what we've built and knowing the expense and the sophistication of what we've built, it's not easy to get a realistic agent out there that has all the context and knows that they're in an adversarial environment, knows what they're doing, has the right latency so they actually sound exactly like a human. But as you know, models are getting much, much better. They're getting much, much cheaper to deploy. And so we know that it will come. We know that scammers will start to use this. We're seeing a little bit of it now, but it's very rudimentary and not very good. And I think in that instance, it almost reinforces the need for our product, because if you've got these kind of, these bots that are flooding everyday people.
Yes.
And, you know, on the assumption they get to a stage where they are very convincing, and we know that they will get to that stage, then we still need a shield to protect against that.
Well, it's almost a parallel universe, isn't it? Human beings will go about their business and bots will be talking to one another. But what's the end point? If you've already got a bot that's talking to a scammer for how many hours or minutes?
Like 80 minutes.
80 minutes.
And there's when the time comes that there's a bot on the other end of the line, which bot gives up first? They could be talking for years.
Yeah, exactly. So we've got these bots waging war in the cloud while we're going on about our days. I think obviously the hyperscalers and the cloud providers are going to be really happy because we've got compute and GPUs that are being used. But so for example, our bots have disengagement strategies. If they know that they're not going to, if they know that, this call is not a really good call to extract intelligence from, then they'll pretty much drop the call. Yeah.
You only employ the smart bots.
Of course.
They're with a law degree.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Righto.
Prop
time. So, okay. I mean, we've had a very good prop, but we do invite, as you know, we invite all of our guests to bring in something for show and tell.
Okay.
What have you got, please, Brad?
So this is my prop, which is a vial.
I don't think we're allowed to show that on. Just check. What is that, Brad?
This is a vial of sand.
Yep.
And I'm looking at Max now and he's thinking, gosh, I shouldn't have invited this guy on. He bought a vial of sand as a prop. But I was listening to a podcast recently with Mark Andreessen, who's, one of the most respected names in venture capital. And he was talking about this concept, and I thought I would bring it here. In that everything that we just heard, and this was a good segue, I didn't even plan this, but all of what we just heard, and artificial intelligence, the first step in the production line for all of that is this, right? Sand, when you superheat it, turns into silica, or you can produce silicon from sand. You can produce chips from silicon, GPUs and CPUs, and therefore you can actually power artificial intelligence. All of it from this, right? And you think about some of the early scientists, particularly Newton. He was obsessed with alchemy, and he was obsessed with the Philosopher's Stone, which was this transmutation of lead into gold.
So was Harry Potter.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. And many scientists, they spent their whole life trying to actually perfect this. And I think it's really good, almost like just a symbol of that we have perfected that, right? Like we're turning this, one of the most common substances in the world, into complex thought. And I think that just really resonated with me. So I wanted to bring this here.
You just leave that behind too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Just leave that there. Yeah.
The other reason is this is sound from Bondi Beach. It's a place that's very, very important to me. I pretty much grew up there as a child. Obviously, in the last couple of months, there's been some really devastating things that have happened there, and also wanted to acknowledge that. Really been hard for the community. But I just think that Australia, and you'd know this obviously, Max, you've spent so much time in the ASX and NSX, but Australia's always been so good at digging stuff out of the ground. Right?
Yes.
And you think about like the iconic picture of Australia, it's Bondi Beach with lots of sand, and we've got these beautiful sandy beaches everywhere. And I think this may reflect a bit of a turning point, right, in the Australian economy. And I don't think BHP or any of the others are going anywhere, but you think about what you can do with this and turn it into this complex thought. There's amazing AI companies that are coming out now in Australia. The ecosystem is great. We've got great venture funding here. I think that, the next thing that we're digging out of the ground, which might be this, but what we're doing with it and what we're turning it into is going to be really, really great for Australia.
Yeah.
Superb.
I think that's a great story. That's a great prop. And we also look forward to the day when we fully appreciate Bondi Beach for being all the best things in Australia as well.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Before we wrap, rapid fire questions for you.
Yeah.
One AI misconception you hear all the time.
So I think there's this misconception that everyone kind of knows what they're doing with AI. You hear all the sensationalism and you hear all the big organizations saying we're employing AI and, you know, we've done all these amazing things. Actually, I have this quote. If you don't mind, I just want to read it so I can get it properly. But I came across this quote and I thought it'd be very, very good to share because I just love it. So it's AI is like teenage sex. Everyone talks about it. Nobody really knows how to do it. Everyone thinks everyone else is doing it. So everyone claims that they are doing it.
Did a bot give you that?
Only the law degree bots.
That's a great quote. And I've got 2 teenagers, so keep out on them.
You're worried.
What do startup founders underestimate when taking an idea from concept to reality?
The time and commitment it takes for that.
Yeah,
I think people
I think
come
that's
up.
the common.
Yeah. Like you come up with this idea and you think it's a great idea and you go and you start building something and you start tinkering something. Next thing you know, you're raising capital for it. Next thing you know, 4 years down, you're committed to this. And there's something beautiful in that. But I think, people underestimate how much time and effort and blood, sweat and tears it actually takes.
Yeah.
Last one, we talked about not being a lawyer, but what about being a lawyer? What did it teach you that still helps you today?
I think it taught me how to use words to your advantage. One of the partners of the law firm always used to say to me, we're surgeons and the English language is our scalpel. And nowadays with AI, I can write you beautiful emails, but I still think that the power of words is something that will always stick true with me, and the power of kind of persuasion in a nice way will always stick with me.
What a great way to wrap up Ticker Talk.
Indeed.
Fantastic, Brad.
Thank
Great
you,
to
Brad.
see you.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. Well, that was terrific, Brad's talk. Do tune in for that. You're in for a treat, including because of the couple of props that he used during our conversation.
Scammers beware.
Absolutely, yes. You need to be on your digital toes. Our next guest in a fortnight will be Professor of Finance at the University of Melbourne, someone I've known for a little while. You would have come across her too in our exchange days. Professor Dr. I think she goes by both, Carol Comerton Ford.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm still practicing my exchange days at the National Stock Exchange of Australia. And for anyone who wants to give us some future suggestions for episodes, drop us a line at tickertalk at nsx.com.au. Thanks, Matt.